Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishna Kesubos, Perek Base, Chapter 2, Mishna Yud, Mishna 10. We did the first half, so let's just read through the first half quickly, and then we'll focus on the other half of the Mishnah we didn't do yesterday. These are the people that are believed to testify when they are adults about what they saw when they were a minor. A person would be believed to say, this is the handwriting of my father. This is the handwriting of my teacher. This is the handwriting of my brother. He would be one of the two witnesses to be able to verify the signatures as not being forged. And if he just says it based on what he remembers as a child, that would be enough. I remember when this woman went to her chuppah, went to her wedding, bihinuma, with a veil, or with her hair being untied, and that is a sign that she was a basula when she got married, and therefore she has the right to collect a ksuba of 200 zuz. And that so and so used to leave the school to go to immerse himself in the mikveh in order to eat truma. That's in order to establish that he's a kohen, and that he used to take a portion of truma at the granary together with us. Okay, so that's what we got up to yesterday, and all these examples are actually situations where you're not going to need a full-fledged testimony. It's going to be in situations where you need to establish things based on rabbinic law. And therefore, we say that the sages were lenient in these cases to allow someone to testify, again, only when they're adult, about what they saw in their childhood, which is something that typically a person cannot do for testimony. Now, I just want to go back on the part that it says that the person is testifying. I remember when I was a child, that so-and-so used to go to the mikveh in order to eat truma, and then he used to come to the granary to take truma with everybody else. And this is in order to establish that he's a kohen. And we said that the only truma that you could eat based on this testimony is truma midrabanan, something that's only truma according to rabbinic law. That is what we can believe. That is what we rely on this testimony for. Now, when it comes to this testimony, you don't need two witnesses. That we had previously. One kohen can testify to another kohen that he's a kohen. So you don't need witnesses, but you need a witness. And we're saying that here, this witness who is basing his testimony on what he saw as a child is going to work for Truma Midrabanan. Now, the Bartanura points out another thing. Okay, so he said that this person used to go to the mikveh to eat Truma. Maybe he wasn't a Kayin. Maybe he was a slave of a Kayin. The slave of a Kayin also eats Truma. And he has to be pure in order to eat Truma too. So maybe this person was leaving Cheder, was leaving school to go to the Tov in the mikveh, wasn't a Kayin, but he was a slave of a Kayin. Says the Bartanura, can't be. You can't teach Torah to a slave of a Kayin. A Kayin is someone that he needs to know what mitzvahs he needs to do, but you're not going to you can't send him to yeshiva just to learn like other kids. So therefore, he couldn't have been an Eved because you're not allowed to have an Eved. You're not allowed to teach an Eved Kanani, a Gentile slave Torah.
Even though they're like
so what they need to know, they'll know. But to have them sit there and learning a cheder, that you can't do. Another thing is, okay, and what about the other case? The other case was he went to the granary. He was there at the granary getting truma with the rest of us. No, maybe he was a slave of a kohen coming to the granary to get food. Who says he was a kohen? The answer to that is that there's a halacha, the slave of a kohen cannot come without his master to get truma. And therefore, in both these cases, it cannot be that he was a slave of a kohen, but it has to be there was a kohen himself. All right, next case. B'makom hazeh beis hapras. He is now saying that this place is a beis hapras. Beis hapras we had before, and I'll read to you here from the bottom what a beis hapras is. A beis hapras is an area of land in which a grave was plowed over. There was a grave here, and a person was plowed over the grave. So the sages were concerned that the plow might have crushed some bones and scattered them. They decreed, therefore, that anyone who goes within 100 amas of the grave becomes tamei. because we say the plow will take whatever bone pieces 100 amma and not more. So this is again rabbinic. This is not a Torah. This is not according to Torah. According to Torah, you don't have to be concerned about this. This is only something that is a rabbinic concern. Now, if so, we therefore say that in this case, this person was a child, and he's testifying that this area is a Beis HaPras. That means right now so what is this? And again, he's basing it on what he knew when he was a child. That means when he was a child, right? His father told him, "Don't go over here. This is a Beis HaPras." Okay, so he's basically at one level established for us that this area is a Beis HaPras. Okay, and what about how? But okay, it's a Beis HaPras. How far? We don't know where the grave is nowadays. Nowadays, we don't know where the grave is. So we can't go measuring now to find out how far it went. That means he tells us not only is it a Beis HaPras, he's telling us how far the Beis HaPras goes. I guess it can really depend on the situation, what the story here is. If he's able to tell you it's a Beis HaPras and here was the grave, maybe that's going to work too. You're not going to need him. Then you can do the measurements yourself. But in a case where we don't know anymore where the grave was, and he's telling us that there was a grave here and this is a Beis HaPras, he will also be telling us the parameters, how far the Beis HaPras went. Okay, so this is what it. So again, this person probably. I mean, again, it could have been he's a Chaim, and he's saying when I was a child, my father said, "Don't go there," and because it's a Beis HaPras. And this is how we are establishing that it's a Beis HaPras and the parameters of it. Next, v'adkana yunubayin b'Shabbos. And until here, we went on Shabbos. On Shabbos, we have a law called Tchum Shabbos, and on Yontif. A person cannot go more than 2,000 cubits outside of his residence. What the definition of a person's residence is, that's a discussion on itself. What's exactly defined as a residence? But the point is that he establishes he has a residence before Shabbos, and to go 2,000 cubits beyond that residence, he cannot go. So, for instance, if it's outside, if you have an area, your entire city is considered your residence, right? But then you have 2,000 cubits outside the city limits, where there's, let's say, nobody living. So the situation here is like this, right? We're in a situation where for some reason, we don't know what the Tchum Shabbos here is. We don't know what the Tchum Shabbos is. So this person says, when I was a child, I remember we only walked up to here. Which means he's saying, as I'm a child, I remember the Tchum Shabbos went this far. So if we can rely on him to say that, we don't have to make measurements again. So that's the point. The point here is that based on his testimony from when he was a child, he's going to tell us this is how far we went on Shabbos, which means this is how far the Tchum Shabbos goes, and we don't have to remeasure it. Okay, so these are the cases where and again, this is all dealing with rabbinic law, and therefore we can rely on these cases on a person who's testifying based on his childhood, which typically by testimony doesn't work. Okay, avol, however, ein adam neman loymar, a person is not believed to say in these circumstances based on his childhood the following: derech hayelapleni b'makom hazeh. So-and-so has a path in this place. That means he's trying to say that that a certain person acquired the rights of passage through somebody's field. Okay? He had a field on the other side, and he acquired passage through this person's field to get to his field. Okay? Now, apparently, we lost track of that. We don't know about that. And a person is claiming that he has a right here. And who's coming to go ahead and say that he has the right? A person who says, yeah, I remember when I was a child that so-and-so had the right of passage here. And now you want to kind of, renew that right. Well, in that case, we say that this kind of witness, who again would have to be paired up with another witness for sure, because this is a monetary issue, you're going to need two witnesses for it. One of those witnesses cannot be the kind of witness who's only testifying based on what he saw when he was a child. That's because here you're dealing with a monetary issue. You're trying to say that there's an argument going on here. One person says, I have a right of passage. The other person says, no, you don't. The right of passage is a monetary issue. That means at some point you bought that right. You acquired that right. That's a real monetary issue. In a real monetary issue, we cannot use a witness whose testimony is only based on what he knew or saw when he was a child. That's one case. Another case is an interesting case. Ma'amad umisbeit hayo leploni b'makam hazeh. So-and-so had the rights of standing and eulogizing in this place. Okay? So in the times of the Mishnah, the way it worked was, and in many ways we still do it, but the way it's described in times of the Mishnah was that when the person who passed away was been taken to be buried, they made 7 stops. And at each stop, they actually eulogized the person, and they also did some kind of a standing up and sitting down ceremony that was done. Okay? Now, the point here is like this. You know, the person is you're moving a person who passed away to the cemetery, and you want to go through someone's land, and you want to have the right to stop in the land and to do this. It's in somebody's private property. You want to have a right to do it. So in order to have the right to do it, again, people would acquire that right. They'd acquire that right in order to be able to, in this area, stop and eulogize and do the standing and the sitting, even though it's on somebody else's property. You'd acquire that right. So apparently in this case, what's happening is that there's a question. You know, there's a question. One person is claiming I have the right, and in your property, the other person says, you know, you don't have the right. So now we have a person coming to testify and say, you know what, I remember when I was a child, right, that so-and-so had already acquired that right to do that then. I guess it's something you'd acquire that right for, you know, for forever. And he's trying to say that this person, yes, I remember as a child that this person had acquired the right to be able to do this. Meaning, I don't know if he says I knew about the transaction. He says, yes, I remember as a child, this is what we did here, which means that he acquired the right to do it. And therefore he's trying to say, even now, that right continues. Maybe for, again, other situations that this person has. Again, this is a real monetary issue. This is being able to basically go into somebody else's property and do something against his will because you claim you acquired the right. That's a real monetary issue. For that, you need 2 full-fledged witnesses. And if one of the witnesses is just going to be someone who is testifying based on his childhood, that would not be accepted in this case. Right. So these are the last 2 cases. These last 2 cases are where that kind of witness is not accepted. Okay. V'da, continue now with the laws of rechilas. The isser rechilas hu afilu ala ma'aretz. One may not speak rechilas about even a person who's an ignoramus. Because the Torah says, do not go around as a peddler, as a talebearer of people amecha, of your nation. Well, just because he's ignoramus doesn't mean he's not of your nation. And even if you go out and you see that this ignoramus, this ignorant person, he derided a person, he spoke badly about a person in front of others for no reason, right? He said to someone, this and this did this. This and this guy did this to you, and there was no reason to say it. And that person had a right to do what he did. And we've already said it doesn't make a difference if it's the truth. It doesn't make a difference if you go to someone and you say, so-and-so spoke badly of you. And he had no right to do it. And maybe Tak had no right to do it. Because whatever had happened based on what he's saying, you were right. And therefore it's wrong for him to go and tell people to go tell someone else what this other person did. He has no right to tell others, to basically tattle on someone for what he did to that person. He had no right to do it. Absolutely no right. It was wrong 100% for him to do it. Now you want to go ahead and say to other people what he did. You can't do that. You can't tell rechilas. You can't go back to the person and said, so-and-so spoke badly about you, and he had no right to do it, and it was wrong for him to do it. You can't do that. Because even if it's true, the prohibition of lashon rechilas is even on truth. And therefore, if it's a situation where there is no constructive purpose, as we mentioned before, and which I assume he's going to be discussing again in the future, then you have no right to go ahead and do that. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Nowadays, we call it an easement.
An easement.